How about us? Do we sound good?
You sound good. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, Ben, you sound
So
good.
for today, if you're good with it, we'll start with our intro and then really just want to have a conversation about you if that's all right, and just kind of hear your story and testimonial and just how you accomplished all the things that you've accomplished today.
Yeah.
So does that sound like an all right conversation to have?
Hey, whatever way I can help kind of inspire others to be better, do better. And like our mission statement is light up the world one well-adjusted family at a time. And it starts with kids and it goes to parents and goes on to grandparents. So yeah, whatever we can do to help, that's what I'm here for.
Beautiful.
I like that too.
So I'll kick it off and then we'll dive on in and get this thing going.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
All right. What's going on, everybody? I'm Ben Backus.
And I'm Kevin Paulin, and welcome to the Falling Up Podcast, where we have conversations about turning obstacles into opportunities. And on today's show, we have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Devin Brassard.
I'm excited to dive into this conversation for a lot of reasons, but in reading through kind of the guest inquiry form, something that will always jump off the table to me is when I hear severe back injury in high school. So I too had a pretty severe back injury where I broke my back my junior year.
Did Ben freeze on you too, Kevin?
Yeah, he did.
Okay. She's
he's a mid-pro.
We do the intro over again. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah. Definitely gonna be a rewind.
All right. I think I'm back. I'm back. Nope.
Freezing again.
My back.
It's yeah.
Yep.
The thing is like whenever it freezes, it's never like in a good moment,
Yeah,
okay,
it always freezes at the worst moment. Yeah, definitely.
So like,
nope. Am I somewhat back?
You're kind of
no,
robot dancing right now. You got it going and then you freeze again.
Yeah. You may have to jump in and out, I guess. Maybe log. I don't know.
Anything?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Now I'm back.
You back? Yeah,
there you go. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Oh man, the wonders of it's crazy. So in my office, I'm the only one not hardwired into the Ethernet cable because, as you know, Kev, I don't have a spot. Like it's all the way around in like 3 offices down. So I'm the only one that gets destroyed in my office with Wi-Fi. So I apologize for that.
No worries.
But bringing it back, I think anytime I hear someone talking about back injuries in high school and the ramifications from that, it gets me excited because I think as humans, it's all about being able to relate and connect. So I'm just really curious about, I would imagine it's not a coincidence that you got into your profession and there was this life experience at an early age. So can you kind of connect the dots for us and just tell us about your experience and your story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do apologize. I know you guys are great hosts and you set us up for success and sent me like a bio request form and I completely spaced on filling it out. So I do apologize for that. You guys have done great in getting organized and being flexible with this. And you're not alone, Ben. In fact, it's not a coincidence because it's like statistically, I mean, right now in the United States, like opioid addiction is one of the biggest problems in the developed nation. I mean, really, like more people died from opioid addiction and overdose than COVID. And so, but it's something that's not really talked about a whole lot. And most of those addiction problems come from chronic pain or significant pain. And people are looking for hope and for answers. And opioids are the way to treat pain. It's not a way to help heal, but it's a way to treat pain. And people don't know the other options. So I'm excited to be on this with you and be able to share my experience because it's not my story isn't one that is a surprise. It is quite predictable because I grew up in a poor family and in a trailer in out in the country in Snohomish, out in the sticks. And I had 3 brothers, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was a landscaper, so low-income earners. And my memory growing up was like not having food, right, and being hungry often. And so we, that was our life, but we didn't know any better because that was just our existence. And then, I played sports, I played soccer, any free after school program my family was all about, because we couldn't do any paid programs. So even though I would qualify for like the more select soccer is what it's called here, I wouldn't be able to do it because of financial demands that would be there. I mean, we had a hard time finding food, right? And so we had this kind of unique upbringing. And then the summer before my junior year of high school, which is interesting that it's the same timeline as you, my friend and I were going to his house, and he was driving, and I was in the passenger seat of a Toyota 4Runner, and he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, I scared my friend Rory doing this one time." And then he ends up gunning it. He got going 55 miles an hour. I remember looking over the speedometer and then seeing the speedometer tack up 55, and then where the road, if you know how roads kind of, when they go from asphalt to gravel, how they kind of make a lip. So when he hit that, he hit it a little bit of an angle and ended up like launching it to the driver's side of the road, which then he hit the embankment of the road, which went up, and then that put us into a roll. And he didn't have his seatbelt on at the time, but I did. And so when we rolled, if you've ever been in a car accident, you reflectively just put your arm out, right? So I ended up putting my arm out, grabbing a hold of him, which then pushed him between me and the seat, and then pushed me out of the top part of the seatbelt. And then I went through the side window with my face, and then hit the ground at 55 miles an hour with my face, and blacked out. I remember seeing, sky gravel, and then boom, black. And I actually woke up to Jesse, my friend, yelling, "Oh my God, I killed Devin," because he was wedged between me and the seat, and my face is in the gravel and the dirt, so I couldn't really say a whole lot back until he got off of me. And so then the emergency vehicles came, and the vehicles trashed. And what ended up happening, it hit the embankment several rolls, hit a big utility transformer box, went into several more rolls after that, and then collided with the ground. So it's just total. So the EMTs come out, and they're like, "Okay, you need to go to the hospital." And again, like, we were like, didn't have dinner poor, right? And I'm like, "We don't have health insurance," and I'm like, and I know, like, I'm alive right now. Like, if my parents get a hospital bill, I will no longer be alive. So no, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna refuse your service, EMT. And again, I'm I'm young and invincible, right? And I'm like, I'm fine, right? I'm good. The adrenaline's coursing through my body. And then that next day, I woke up, had a bruise all the way across my chest for where the seatbelts pushed out. I could barely lift my arm. I walked with a pretty significant limp as the adrenaline dissipated out of my body. And then of course my parents like, "Oh, my God, what happened?" And then they did what, again, that we kind of talked about initially, that most parents do, is they took me to my medical doctor, right? And the diagnosis was I compressed several discs in my thoracic spine, tore the muscles on my back, and significant concussion, neurological damage. And the solution that was given was, drugs, right? And people sometimes get like a little bit cynical towards doctors, like all they want to do is give you drugs. Well, yeah, they're medicine doctors. Like, literally, medicine is drugs. There's no natural medicine. It is drugs. They are drug doctors. So it's like one of those things where people get sometimes a little bit negative towards them. It's like, that's their tool, and they're good at their tool, right? But that's their tool. And so that began the process of a significant drug addiction on my own part, and because I was then now taking pain pills, muscle relaxers, and the thing for me, and maybe your experience was different, Ben, but like for me, like, didn't actually like stop the pain. It just made me high enough where I didn't care so much, right? And then what ended up being for me, again, the best paid way to remedy pain was smoking pot. And so I ended up start smoking weed, smoked significant amounts of weed, and then I ended up getting a job washing dishes at a tavern in after school in order to buy weed. And again, like, significant back injury, anything forward flexion any forward bending is just excruciating. And so I'm like, doesn't make sense. And so I ended up deciding that, the entrepreneurial spirit that I had was like, it made more sense if you buy larger amounts of weed and then sell it to my friends, right? And then, then that would solve the whole not having to wash dishes with a broken back. And I, I always strive for excellence. I've always been that person, and so I got really good at that. And through lots of experiences that were not good, I ended up almost, I mean, to the point where I was buying and selling like pounds of marijuana and growing pounds of marijuana, and I almost got busted. I almost got, the cops were following us. It's a significant boiling the frog process. And I asked my mom about this too. And I was like, how did this get so out of hand? I'm like, really? Because my mom didn't smoke weed. My mom she suffered with opioid addiction, but she never was illegal in her addiction. And at that time, pot was illegal. Now in Washington, it's not. And she said, it was like one of those things after you broke your back, it's like you were just dead inside. And she's like, when you smoked weed, it's like, I got to see my son again. And then it just escalated. And I think a lot of parents also struggle with this idea. They see their loved ones suffering, and they're like, well, if they just do this thing and it relieves their suffering, and that's good. And then that road keeps going, right? And that's the road that I was on. And I almost get busted, and that's another story for another day. And I end up deciding, you know what, fire selling everything and not selling weed anymore. I ended up it's like my summer, or the summer before my senior year, I had like $25,000, right? It's an unreal amount of money for a high schooler. And the problem is I'm still in massive amounts of pain. Part of my face, half of my face is paralyzed at this point. I walk with a pretty noticeable limp and leg drag. And I had such bad muscle spasms that if I went to go grab something, and like in school, high school is a hard time as it is. If I went to go grab a pencil, my neck would spaz, and it was like that. I felt like this tweaker, and so every day at night, I remember laying in bed, and this thought that just haunted me because I couldn't sleep. It's this weird juxtaposition, and I would wager, Ben, you've probably been in the same situation where like, I just need to heal, but I can't sleep. And so then for me, what would haunt me is this thought of like, if this is the way the rest of my life is going to be, is this a life that's even worth living? And then, then do it again the next day and just be high constantly. So even though I'm not selling pot, I am now still smoking like a half ounce a day, and it's easy to burn through a lot of money. So literally burn through all the money. And it got to the point where, this is how bad it was. Outside of high school, there's this guy, and they're handing out these little orange Bibles. I don't know if you've ever seen these before. They're the Gideon Bibles. And I take this Gideon Bible, and I literally use pages from this Bible to roll joints and smoke joints. Talk about getting the word of God in you. Okay. So when I die, I wake up in hell. I know that's why, right?
Yeah.
And so it got to the point where I'm down to my last little bit of money, and I have no friends, by the way, anymore. I was super popular when I sold pot. So many friends, endless amount of friends. And then all of a sudden, no, and I'm so mad about this, right? Because I thought we had real friendships, that I ended up, like I just pulled out this little book, and I'm like, went to the verses, and there's little appendices, and it's like anger, and I went to the appendices on anger, and then we have scripture there. And by the way, this time my memory is also gone. Like I've sustained such significant brain damage that's like, if we started a conversation, by the end of the conversation, I wouldn't know who you were, what we talked about. And so my grades tanked in school. So, and I later got a neurological evaluation to kind of quantify that. But so I got this verse, and I like just focused on like, studying one verse at a time. And I just got like an ounce of peace from reading those words. And at first I grew up churchy, but my parents were divorced, the abuse in my household. I'm not religious, because I'm like, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. Right. And like, all these people believe all these things, and I'm like, I don't see the evidence in their belief systems. And my family was no different. Broken home, a lot of abuse. And so I only, for a while, I only read verses like from Jesus, right, in red. Like, okay, this guy was God, then this is what I'm going to read, right? And maybe I'm still a little bit cynical, but it was interesting, the timing. So I out of money, and then I am again thinking about suicide every single day, and I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I get a little peace when I read the scripture, but I don't have a good enough memory where I can actually memorize it. And then someone was like, why don't you go to a chiropractor? and then within that week, I ended up going to Dr. Elaine Stout in Silver Lake, who's now retired, and then starting the process of chiropractic care. And when I went to her office, I mean, it was the whole evaluation process, and then I got my one adjustment from her, and my world. I'm used to being high all the time at this point, right? I'm taking pain pills, muscle relaxers, smoking copious amount. After that first adjustment, my world was so rocked. It took me like 2.5 hours to drive the 25-minute drive back home to my house. And so then and it wasn't that. It's like the next day I woke up and I actually felt worse. I felt like I had been hit by a bus. I felt awful, right? And then the next day after that, I was like, well, wait a minute, actually, I can move a little bit better. And then I diligently followed her care plan for the next 3 years, and then regained my mobility to the point where I was able to work construction. And now, I mean, 40 years old, you wouldn't know that I used to be a kid that walked with a leg drag or had a paralyzed face, or could not move my arms without having these tweaker actions going on. And so the decision to become a chiropractor was made pretty early on, because this chiropractor, like literally, and this is before the opioid addiction epidemic. I was part of that original group that started in the late 90s, and so I didn't realize like how concreted my path was, right, by so many people that struggle with opioid addiction. And this chiropractor was Dr. Elaine Stout. And there's lots of different kinds of chiropractors. She was like the voodoo witch doctor, like I don't even know what you're talking about, lady. But she literally, like, by providing chiropractic care to me and allowing my body to heal, put me on a different road that so many are on. And as I barely graduated high school, as I worked construction, like I just could never think of what would be a more profoundly impactful life than being able to be that person that just simply helps people redirect the route, whatever route they want to go on, but redirect it from a path that's going to less to a path that's going on to more, as far as movement, mobility, energy, happiness, success. And so when I hear about you guys and your guys' mission, and like really like your heart is like kids, like I am so thankful to be asked to join on this podcast, because really anything I can do to help with any of the people that you serve. So what would you guys say is like the main struggle that a lot of the people that you serve kind of come up on, and how maybe I could help through a lot of stories and experiences, maybe help kind of give hope or inspiration to some of the people that specifically that are struggling?
Yeah, I think for us, or our audience rather, the audience that we target are those that are at that low point, that need that encouragement. Two things. One, needs the encouragement or empowerment for them to climb out of that hole, so they could go in that upward trajectory. And then two are tangible activities or mindsets or just things that someone can do that others have done, like yourself, to climb out of that hole. Like what are and we can start with there. What are some tangible things that you would advise someone that's in that low point to perform to climb out?
Yeah, absolutely. So real easy. This is, if you got a pencil in front of you, write down this equation. This is one of Newton's laws. E equals mc squared. Because if I can synapse and by the way, that hole that people are in, that hole never goes away. It's just a matter of how much brighter the opening above it gets, so you get more light on yourself. Because as we'll kind of break into like the neuroanatomy involved in it, which I've had the honor and privilege of working with some of the top neuroanatomy experts in the world. This idea of like, okay, this low point that I'm in, this will get better, and it will be revisited. And so I remember with so I had the whole neuroevaluation done after. It's like, especially with kids and car accidents, there's all these like legal things that have to happen. So I had this pretty significant cognitive impairment, and it was probably years after the car accident that I get sent to this neuroevaluation, and it was a full day of testing. And at this point, I've been under chiropractic care for years. I am now mobile. I'm working construction. I am high functioning, and my memory's not great. In fact, I got the credit for being such a hard worker when I worked construction, because I would run everywhere. And I got seen as like this go-getter, right? But really what it was, my memory was so bad that they were like, go get the, pipe wrench, right? Whatever it was. Like, I couldn't remember that long. So I would have to sprint as fast as I could to go to the tool shed or wherever I had to go in order to then get the tool. So I got this habit of like seeing like I was like this highly motivated this kid, but really I just had such bad memory and it felt stupid. And you got yelled at a lot in construction if you came back and were like, what was that thing I was supposed to get? So I ended up getting, yeah, right. Yeah. And that's part of the kind of the blessing of working construction. You get to be able to interact in a kind of a raw.
Yeah. That in restaurants.
And the restaurants. Oh yeah, restaurants.
Kitchen restaurants.
Helps you build thicker skin with dealing with disgruntled customers.
Absolutely.
So I go to this neuro evaluation, and this lady, I don't remember her name. She's a PhD, MD, and she has this whole day of testing with me. And then what they did is they rated different cognitive abilities. So they did short-term memory, and 100% was average, and short to long term, again, 0 to 100%, and then long term, and then problem solving. So each one of these metric areas had this percentage score. And my short term was like 25%. It was so bad. And short to long term was okay. Long term was okay. And then problem solving was like 200 and something percent. And so I inquired why that was. And she said, well, what happened is when you had a significant injury, a damage, then your body compensate for it. As long as you could provide an environment of what's called neuroplasticity, your brain can change. And now, understanding the neuroscience, I now understand that one of the things that has been well demonstrated in a significant number of studies is that every time someone receives a chiropractic adjustment, immediately there is an increase in neuroplasticity by like 25 to 45%. Immediately, boom, as soon as they do the adjustment. So I didn't know this at the time. I was just like, oh, wow, look at that. My brain's incredible, which again, it is. It's just the chiropractic care helps utilize that neuroplasticity. And so because my memory part of my brain had become severely damaged, traumatized, broken, the problem-solving part of my brain had become advanced. So I guess the first piece of encouragement that I would offer, if you're feeling like you're in a hole right now, just know that inside of your brain is the potential for so many significant skill sets that would not be possible without the hole that you're in right now. And it's about just getting the other part of the brain lit up. And again, there's so many, how many stories do we see where it's like these hero stories of people from broken tragedy then rise up and become advanced? Because if they can restore neuroplasticity within the brain, that trauma, that dark spot, that overactive survival mechanism becomes fuel for the other part of the brain. And this again is well documented in scientific literature. So that back to that energy, E equals MC squared. Energy is what's necessary in order to see more light, because the darkness is going to be you're going to be there intermittently throughout the rest of your life. Maybe I'm outspoken, but that's been my experience from being very successful to being not very successful. And I remember when I sat down with the medical doctors, and again, they had their tools they were going to give me, and I was diagnosed with severe medical depression, severe generalized anxiety disorder also. And they said, okay, well, here's our tool. Again, going back to their tools, they're drug doctors, they're medicine doctors. Their tools are medicine. And she hands me these prescriptions for depression and anxiety, and I'm looking at them and I'm reading the side effects, and I'm like, okay, so I want to follow the logic, right? My brain has been damaged, so this is why I feel so bad. Yeah, correct. And so could you tell me how these chemicals now will help my brain heal in order to get better? Because at this point, I mean, I contemplated suicide for a year on a daily basis. Like, I'm used to feeling bad. And so the idea of simply feeling better wasn't really a good enough option for me, especially once I went from broken to now regaining health and regaining strength and regaining mobility and functionality. So the feeling part didn't really motivate me. And she goes, and she looked me right in the eye. She goes, well, that's the thing. It's like, medicine doesn't help you heal better. Medicine will help you feel better. And I'm like, well, the side effects are significant. So I'm okay feeling bad if that's the only benefit. If this is going to help me heal and you could tell me how these chemicals were going to be helping my body repair itself, then that would be another thing. And that's, I feel like, is the biggest truth that we're lied to about, of like, at some point over the magical rainbow, there's going to be this feeling of like, now it's all right? It's all good. But the thing that she summed up to me, and I remember this, I don't remember her name. She said, so just know for the rest of your life, your brain is going to go through these patterns where you're going to have these very low lows. And when that occurs, just know it's chemical changes within your brain. And it is neurological changes that are occurring. And what we, as human beings, want to do is we want to assign a value to it. Like, the reason why I feel XYZ is because of ABC. And she said, that's what your brain's going to want to do. You're going to want to say, why am I feeling this bad? Well, it's probably my job. Yeah, that's right. I don't like my job. And now you've created a link within the brain of my job equals bad. And if you're familiar with the Ivan Pavlov study with ringing a bell, showing it food, for those that maybe aren't the neuro buffs out there, it's like Ivan Pavlov is this Russian scientist, and he noticed that when he brought food into a room, the dog would start to salivate in this autonomic response. And then he wondered if he could pair it. So he rung a bell, showed the dog food, rang a bell, showed the dog food. And he eventually got to the point where he could ring a bell and the dog would start to salivate without the food. So an autonomic nervous system response became paired. Even though the food's not there, our digestive system still became activated. And so in essence, the same thing happens when we feel that low feeling of like, why is it feeling this way? What's the bell, right? And it's my job, my wife, my spouse, my kids, whatever it is. And she just said to me, she said, whenever you get to those moments, just realize this is just the way I feel right now because it's the way I feel right now. That's it. That's the only answer that is necessary in order to satisfy that thing. So I guess maybe that's a good takeaway, is that when someone it's not because of the things around you, it is because your brain is rapidly making changes. And now I've had the honor and privilege to study and take care of a lot of neurosensory processing disorder kiddos. And that's like with kids that struggle with auditory or sensory processing disorders, when you provide a chiropractic adjustment, it revs them down. And so they're able to process more of their world. And we've seen violent, nonverbal kids that are self-contained, cannot go in the classroom, regain the ability to speak, to function, to get back in the school the first time for some of them. And what we noticed, it's the most incredible thing. Developmentally, do you guys have kids?
No.
No kids.
Well,
okay.
Ben, you got Leroy. Don't do that. Ben, you got Leroy.
Who's Leroy?
Leroy's my dog.
Oh, okay.
He's a good dog, and he certainly salivates when that bell gets rung.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Every time he sees you, right? He's like, he knows right now. Daddy's in the house. Food's coming. Well,
the best dog ever.
Yeah, dogs are more difficult than kids. So if you're ready if and when you ever decide to have kids, because dogs are harder than kids are, because kids, they go through these developmental changes, right? They're born and then they communicate their needs crying, and then they get their needs met, they stop crying, and that kind of process goes on through every developmental change. But this is such an interesting thing that happens, and this is mainly for you guys also with the people you serve, is that every time that a kid is about to make a developmental jump, all of a sudden they freak out, like super fussy, super emotional. It's almost like a regression, like, oh, they're doing so well. Oh my gosh, now they regressed. And it's because the brain, when it's starting to make new synapses, meaning break an old bell ringing connection to form a new one, that's a lot of energy and it's a lot of work, and it makes a very emotional demand on that child. And I realize that this is actually true with people, with adults, with us, right? That low feeling is about actually your brain about to make a breakthrough. because our brain, we have this, this gelatinous little thing that is inside our skull that's pretty important. It is surrounded by something called cerebral spinal fluid, which is about twice the level of glucose or sugar as our blood. So kind of if you're ever at a sporting event or someone gets hit in the face and they say, man, it's weird, it tastes sweetness. And you get that person in the hospital because they have fractured their skull and the CSF is leaking down into their tongue. Because that's how much sugar is in the cerebral spinal fluid around our brain. And the reason why is because every neurological process is so metabolically demanding. So it takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of sugar, it takes a lot of fuel. And so when an old synapse, especially one like if you're looking at someone who's struggled with addiction and or like a repeating addictive behavior, it's like that's a pretty deeply ingrained neurological process. And when that sucker breaks, it's a lot of work. And so the person that is struggling, that they're feeling like, oh my God, I'm hopeless. Oh my gosh, I'm in a dark place. Oh, hell yeah. That means you're right in the right place, which means your brain is rapidly making changes. And so there's two options, which is moving into our algorithm is either A, you can blame it on whatever's around you. Like, oh, I feel bad. Why? X, Y, Z, make up some story inside our head. Or B, you can convert it into action, which is the second part of the equation of MC squared. Move, connect, create. So movement. So on a very simple level, and I've been a fitness trainer. I've trained hundreds of people from Miss Washington 2009 to morbidly obese to running school-wide programs. And, and I work one-on-one with people. And I had a saying when I took on a personal training client is that if I get someone to cry, I can get them to try. And that's difficult to do one-on-one with everybody, right? A, we're all super guarded. B, there's got to be accountability where it's like emotional response and then boom, put them into action. And so it's, for me, I don't lean too much on doing that type of assisting anymore because like at a simple level, like 90% of our activation within the brain comes from movement of the spine. So running activates and moves every single part of our spine. Yoga activates and moves every single bit of our spine. I don't know why yoga people be all weird about it, but it does. And that's the thing. They've shown so many studies that yoga is helpful. And again, this is maybe my cynicism towards Christians is that like yoga's from the devil, right? It's like, how can something that helps statistically the human body heal be from the devil? A house cannot be divided and succeed. It's like, and there's my quote. And this is, again, I get in lots of arguments with Christians, even though I am a follower of Christ, is that, if it's good, it's from God. But when it becomes God, it is no longer good. And that falls with every category, right? And so yoga, number 2, as far as like, what can you do when you're feeling bad? Run. Number 2, yoga. For me, like on the hierarchy of the most reward, bang for your buck, time invested, like getting specific chiropractic adjustments to restore the communication between a stuck spot in the spine and the brain, gets the brain moving. And so for me, again, after training hundreds of people, lecturing, talking, it's like I'm all out of words. I'll just adjust them because I'm like, I could sit and talk at you all day long. I can try to get you to run, but I know with adjusting somebody immediately, we can add movement to the spine and on to the mind also.
Can you speak to that a little more? You noted when someone gets a chiropractic adjustment, 25 to 40% increase in neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
How does that come to fruition?
Well, it's so fascinating. So if you look up Dr. Heidi Havoc, he's a PhD neuroscientist in New Zealand. She's kind of pioneered this research where she had these theories of like, okay, well, I understand you got a stuck spot. Ow, it hurts here. You restore motion. It doesn't hurt so much anymore. But then there's all these other physiological benefits that occur. And so she really wanted to understand, like, how do you explain that? And so she's done EEG studies, and then and so they hook up these EEGs, 32 and leads. I have an EEG machine too, but it's not that advanced. And then they make a very specific chiropractic adjustment. And this is the fascinating thing too. It's not about gross manipulation, because MDs do manipulation of the spine, PTs manipulation of the spine, and they say, well, and they publish research that shows minimal benefit. And Dr. Havoc's actually shown, it's because chiropractors who are trained to identify specific stuck regions in the spine know exactly where to restore motion. People that just grossly pop things, like, not doing anything. We're actually, chiropractors are restoring stuck spots in the spine. And so this, in a PhD, I'm trying to blank it, out of Japan, mapped the brain, and he showed that 90% of cortical interaction engagement is from movement within the spine. So the theory is, and that's now coming to light, is that when this misalignment, the stuck spot in the spine occurs, now that part of the brain shuts off and it's no longer communicating with that part of the spine. So when it restores motion at the area, and basically it's like a circuit breaker that's been turned off, where you turn it back on and then the brain starts to turn back on. And that neuroplasticity, they've measured it for be about 20 to 40 minutes of neuroplasticity, meaning rapid cortical changes can occur. And so in my own clinical experience, I've run experiments of like, well, what's the best algorithm, right? So if you can create neuroplasticity, how do you then, in essence, retrain the ring the bell response? And that's one of the reasons why we own this 47-acre, jungle retreat center in Dominican Republic, where it is immersed in nature, because nature itself is a healing environment. And it's almost as if our species existed in it for 300,000 years, right? So the theory that I have, and we're testing it here, is that let's say we immerse somebody in a natural environment and then adjust them like 4, 5, 10 times a day, and then turn on that neuroplasticity. How much normalcy can we reprogram into our brains, into our body, into our health? And I mean, because like the data shows, like zoo animals develop mental health issues within a month, right? And what have we all turned into in our inside areas? We've all turned a bunch of Zoom animals. And so kind of a piece of neuroanatomy that we can dive into, which shines a little bit of light on this also, is understanding what happens when we don't have this prefrontal cortex engagement. Is we basically have a gas pedal within our autonomic nervous system, or automatic nervous system, which is the fight or flight mode. And then we have the brake pedal, which is the rest, digest, develop, heal, rest, parasympathetic nervous system. And so if you could, and there's in this, I'm going to simplify it again. This is much more complex, but the simplified version, think of the prefrontal cortex, vagus nerve, is the brake pedal. And this is the rest, digest, develop, heal. And then on the other side is the amygdala, which is the emotional part of our brain, which is the gas pedal. Got to go, got to fight, got to flight. And so, and they do not work at the same time. They kind of go like this, right? You cannot be in growth mode and protection mode at the same time. And so from my experience in studying the literature, is that with addiction, with people that are struggling with repetitive toxic behaviors, they're stuck in that gas pedal mode. And they just want to rev down, and that's why they go into addiction, is because they just want to feel like they can chill out, but neurologically they're stuck in that fight or flight mode. So again, chiropractic wise, we know as soon as someone receives a specific chiropractic adjustment, that's immediately what happens. Boom, into brake mode, into healing mode. And so I think this is a good, we can break into understanding a little bit more simplicity. You guys, are you guys familiar with the phrase or the term rigor mortis?
Yes.
Do you know what causes rigor mortis other than death, of course?
That would be the primary thing I would go with. I would also imagine that something remarkably shocking would cause that, just like an overhaul of the sympathetic nervous system.
You're kind of right. You're right on the right thought process. And it's such an interesting thing, because when a person dies, within a sequence of predictable time, their body will go into a flex state in whatever position they're in, which seems a little bit counterintuitive, right? You think of flexing as taking energy, takes action. But in actuality, relaxation is what takes energy. Because relaxation isn't the opposite of flexing. So if you palpate your body and you find spots that are tight, that are flexed, God, the shoulders, talk to a mom, I hold my stress in my shoulders. That's a spot that's like, I just need a massage. But in actuality, what it is that it's a part of the body that isn't able to relax, because relaxation takes energy. Because when a body relaxes. It doesn't just chill. What it does is, I wrote a book, and I'm going to limit my swearing to minimal in this because I know you guys focus on helping kids. But one of the phrases I use is CTFO, chill the F out, right? But it also is change the future outcome, because when you relax, that's when your body goes through the process of adaptation. When you relax, that's when your brain goes through the process of adaptation. When you damage a muscle, when that muscle relaxes, that's when that damage is then developed into more strength. So relaxation requires energy in order to convert the damage to strength. So this takes energy. So when the brain is no longer producing electricity, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about, right? Our brain creates electricity that then controls every single process within our body. And it's not even that much. It's much as much as a light bulb. And it's so minimal to show how efficient this incredible system that we work with is. So when someone dies, the brain is no longer producing electricity. So then those electrical signals are no longer being sent to the body. So then as the energy within the body dissipates, the body goes into flexion. It can no longer maintain a relaxed state. It takes energy in order to maintain a relaxed state. So in essence, when that part of the brain is disconnected from the body, the end byproduct is flexion, is inability to adapt. In essence, a status of the walking dead, right? Of active rigor mortis. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So it would be like when a football player takes a massive blow and they start flexing in all sorts of crazy ways. That's essentially what's going on.
100% seizures, same exact thing. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the movement of adding, so just simply running, not only adds movement within the spine, it actually increases our electricity our brain produces too. So if you think about that again, our brain produces electricity, and that then controls the healing process within our body and the ability to convert stress into strength. Then there's only two variables. Like, how do I increase my juice of getting my brain functioning out with more output? And then how do I improve my communication between my brain and the body? So running exercise is basically the only way. I'm not going to say running. I default to running because, again, as a fitness trainer, I had so many clients. Like, I'm going to get a gym. I'm going to get my workout stuff at home. Like, just put some friggin' shoes on and move. Get rid of the excuse of tomorrow. Like, and that's why. And again, what do people say? I hate running. And, it's like, well, yeah, everyone does, because it sucks.
I was going to ask, Doc, is that okay to weight lift? Because I don't like to run either, but I'll lift some weights.
No, it's all good. It's all good, because as long as you're increasing your cardiovascular output by 30 minutes at a time, 3 to 4 days a week, you increase the wattage your brain puts out. And that's the reason why exercise decreases the risk of death and illness of all types. It's not because exercise is good for us. It's because it increases the amount of power our brain produces.
So that's the movement is the M in E = MC squared. Tell us about the connect and create.
Okay, so connection, there is multiple areas to connect with. Connection number one, as we kind of already talked about with the Symmetry Oasis here, this Dominican experience, connecting with nature. Again, going back to basic brain neuroanatomy, whatever is perceived as new or not normal, our brain's like, I'm going to get put in that fight or flight mode. So our species, based on, again, there's some Christians like, I think we've only been around for 6,000 years. Sure, whatever. But most data that I've looked at says that our species, Homo sapiens, we've been around for like 300,000 years. And so in nature is what is normal for our nervous system. And we got real good at surviving in nature. I mean, to the fact where it's like, there's not other species around. I mean, some people could say, well, we evolved and all the rest of them died off. Okay, cool. Some people say that we killed off the rest of the other species. That's probably, how do we treat different people now? Right. Probably. Right. And the third, I know, right? You're slightly different than me. I hate you, right? It's like, that's weird. It's a weird thing that we do. But again, if you understand the neuroanatomy, it makes sense. Like, slight differences is perceived as danger. And then the third is that we are just the best at adapting. meaning converting stress into strength. And based on the fact that we have the biggest prefrontal cortex, I would lean it's probably a combination of all three, but probably the latter is the most common. So when you, and again, we break it down to make science so stupid, I want to say, but it's like, walking outside barefoot, grounding, good for you. Yeah. It's because that's what's normal for our species for 300,000 years. That is what is natural. So connecting in nature is the first part of the C, connecting in nature. And the second part is and again, we can go into even more depth, like cold plunging, this heat exposure. And again, it's like new science. It's actually, no, think about it. Again, in nature, we didn't have clothes for a while. We didn't have shelters for a while. We would be exposed to different elements. We would have to regulate our temperature pretty significantly often. That's normal. That's how our vagus nerve is meant to function. So connecting in nature, and whatever way that looks like, you can make it artificial with the saunas and the cold plunges and the grounding mats or whatever. Or you can just go outside. Again, people love to spend money. I get it, but it can be something you spend money on. And it could also be as simple as having a plant that you take care of, and also an animal that you take care of, right? And so any type of connection with nature. The second part of connection is connecting with other people. And this is a difficult one for a lot of people. And this is where I think your guys' mission is so important, is because you're providing an avenue for people to connect with other people. Because right now, I mean, we're such an interesting place in culture where it's like, it's a common accepted thing to pay someone to be your friend, AKA counseling. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, well, it's like, that's a safe person to talk to. I'm like, what? We have become so disconnected from reality. Like, every person is a safe person. Like, no one's gonna stab you. No one's gonna. If you're in the Dominican Republic, it can get a little sketchy here. And Haiti, I've been to Haiti. It gets real sketchy there. But so okay, there are dangerous people, but the perceived danger is just indicative of that overactive amygdala. That our nervous system is so wired for fight or flight that the simple thing of like another human being triggers a danger response within our body, and takes intentional effort, like you guys are doing, to provide an environment of natural connection with people that are meant to help and guide, because we've become very intrinsically motivated, right? It's about me, what I want, rather than what about the other person. Because really, when you realize that, like, our brain produces dopamine, which we artificially get it from technology and alcohol, drugs, anything that's pretty much gives you like a high, risky behavior. That dopamine you can actually produce by helping someone else, like doing something nice for another human being, actually gives us that same good feeling. We just haven't been trained to do that anymore, right? So,
and I think just to add to that point, right, you look at, when it comes to addiction, right, where you have all of these different treatment centers, therapists, and to this day, the most impactful means of solving substance abuse is self-help, right? And it's that human connection. And I think that's remarkably profound to me. It's a person helping someone else, right? That's really what it is at its core.
Yeah, 100%, and that's the second thing. So, with the movement, first one, connection, second point, nature, and then also, like, rather than like actively trying to get someone to connect with you, like, maybe that's the simplest thing, is like, find someone you can help, human being that you can go help and connect with, and don't do it in a fake way of like giving a fake compliment or whatever. Like, actually, like, go do the dishes, man. I mean, do something, like, go do something for somebody here. Pick up garbage for somebody else. And how important this is for our brain is, again, if we go back to like neurodevelopmental days, like 300,000 years, our species, we didn't have tools. They didn't show weapons or tools like 60,000 years ago. For 240,000 years, we had to rely on being in groups of people in order to be safe, right? So neurologically, that's pretty crucial. Getting our circle, getting our group, getting your tribe is a common word now that people are using, which is interesting, since it's like, that's literally what it roots back to. And then the third part of connection is and this is again, there's I find myself in a funny place because I am a follower of Christ, but I have a difficult time saying I'm Christian because I go to the book of Mark, and the book of Mark at the end, it's like Christ himself says, my disciples will be known by their work, right? They're going to heal by hand, they're going to cast out demons, and they're going to be able to drink poison without dying, they're going to be fearless with handling snakes. And I look around like the Christians, like I just see a bunch of judgy jerks and that are just kind of wanting to tell the people what to do. And so this next part of the C is not coming from a religious aspect, but more of like a personal observation with myself, connecting with some kind of like higher power, that there is some kind of literature for it. Because when you look at these look at the Bible, and I'm very much someone that I don't really own something until I can balance it with equal parts scripture and science, right? And so oftentimes people want to have like debates and something. I'm like, well, I don't know if I own that yet, right? It's because if I can tell I can balance it with science and scripture, I really have a difficult time. But the more I've studied neuroanatomy, and the more I look at like the Bible specifically, and especially even today's conversation piece, and looking at like this overactive amygdala, that it's referred to as the reptilian center of our brain. And which is interesting because you go back to like the book of Genesis, like the Garden of Eden, like the snake, the reptile, like he didn't suggest to Adam and Eve that they eat the fruit of being the smartest people. He suggested that they eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, right? And so we just talked about like ways to increase this neuroplasticity of connection with other people. And personally, like I found out a couple years ago that one of my good friends, like a friend that I helped like build his house, like he was like abusing his wife, like and doing awful things to her. And for me, I mean, that I have a daughter and I have a wife, and like I have female patients. I'm like, I feel very strongly about protecting women. And all of a sudden, as soon as I knew this about this guy, as soon as I knew about his evil, like I feel negative towards him, right? And so, and I know that is just my reptilian center of my brain, and I know it's not serving me because there's nothing I can do about it. It's we can support the people that we care about. There's nothing I can do about it. And so that connect third point of like finding like some kind of belief system that resonates with you as a person, and then like being able to like have something to study. There's something to be said about something that's lasted the test of time. And the more that we're kind of understanding this neuroanatomy aspect, the more we can kind of see like the like, how do they know that? Like what? Like how do they know that a reptile would tell someone to activate the reptilian center of our brain? Like how would they know that? That's, to me, just blows my mind. And for me, my portal of entry was like studying Jesus' work. I looked at him as a person, and I study him and his actions. And for me, it's again like, I base what I do based on that example. And that's part of our neural reprogramming that occurs because we are born blank slates, and we were just programmed with our environment. And so, and I have yet to find somebody that I can like know that I'm like, yeah, that's the person I want to be like. But the example that Jesus gave in the Bible, when I look at like neuroanatomy wise, he was always in a healing mode. He never went fight or flight protection, self-preservation mode, right? And it's kind of a crazy thing. If I can do a little side story, I'm a chiropractor in Washington State, and Washington State was the most enthusiastic with the mandates, and again, I base my experience on Jesus' teaching. So when Jesus, like he healed the sick, and that's what I do with my hands. I'm like, all right, I got that skill down. And then he didn't show fear in the face of illness. And so when the state was like, you know what, you guys need to cover your face to stop an aerosolized virus, to me it was the equivalent of like if someone asked me like, hey, does underwear stop a fart? I would say no. I smell farts, and the people around me, that have pants, they at least have pants on, right? So if the underwear doesn't stop it, maybe the pants will. In my mind, that was the question that was being asked when I was asked to put a piece of fabric on my face. I didn't watch the news. Okay, that was a big benefit to myself. I was literally ignorantly blissful.
Mhm.
I don't blame anybody else, because I actually ended up doing a lecture later on about it, and I went back and watched the old news stories of the pandemic, and I was like, oh my, what was I thinking? Right? Crazy, so reckless. And so I ended up pretty much under investigation by every single government entity and military that there is, from not wearing a piece of fabric over my face to stop an aerosolized virus. And I was actively committed to being able to best serve my patients, because I did not want my patients to die, and I didn't think that the plan was a good plan, and no plan might have been a better plan, because again, out of the move, connect, create, stay home inside in front of technology, isolation, pretty much it was almost as if the plan was meant to make us sicker. And I understand that people, I understand, again, back to my, people use the tools that they have. The neurologist that offered me drugs as a solution, that's her tools. The people that were in charge of making the decision in the pandemic, they had their tools. And that's why, as people, we need to be better equipped. And so I ended up finding a study that showed that HRV, heart rate variability, was the best predictor on COVID deaths, hospitalizations, or illness. And HRV, heart rate variability, it's in most watches now, most people's beds, the smart beds. What it measures is how quickly your brain can go from gas pedal to brake pedal. Because in essence, when you're at rest, you want to be in brake pedal mode. When you're going, you want to be gas pedal mode. So a high level of variability is good. Heart rate variability. So it measures two specific pieces of neuroanatomy, the prefrontal cortex and then also the vagus nerve. And so I'm like, well, shoot, right there. I know that chiropractic care increases heart rate variability, and I know that it improves vagus nerve function and prefrontal cortex. I'm like, all right, let's get HRV. Let's spent like 30 grand. And at this point I'm getting threatened with, millions of dollars of fine. So I'm like, to me, it's wasn't a big deal to just recklessly spend money, because I was going to lose it all anyways. They were telling me I was going to, you're going to jail and we're fining you a lot. And so we ended up having this HRV, and pretty much everyone's HRV was no good. And so we started increasing people's frequency of care, ended up 0 hospitalizations, 0 deaths, 0 chronic illness with COVID, and even could measure people's oxygen levels as we had someone with COVID that was in that not that high risk kind of demographic. We measured their oxygen levels restoring when we adjusted them, like subclinical, this person's dying, to back to stable. And so fast forward, I'm now kind of doing research with the heart variability, vagus nerve, prefrontal cortex. I ended up getting asked to be like a fly on a wall for this study that was going to be an international study from a PhD with Dr. Guri Gitron in Israel, a leading expert in neuroimmunology. And I'm supposed to be on the, I'm just a, I'm a dum-dum. I have no advanced degrees. I'm like, a clinical experience. That's it. And I'm at the table with these people that are like experts and very smart people. And I ended up on this call with this guy, and no one else could figure out how to get into the call. So I had the leading expert in the world for 25 minutes, and I got to ask him questions about the vagus nerve. And with this, and I'm talking about okay, the things that activate the fight or flight response, thoughts, traumas, toxins, blah, blah, blah. And he yells at me. He's this old guy. He's thick Israel accent. He's like, you need to shut up. And I'm like, what? And he's like, when you understand the vagus nerve and the prefrontal cortex, you understand that the healing part of our nervous system is faster than the fight or flight response by multiple factors. By focusing on the negative, you're simply inhibiting the ability to adapt. And he's like, and by the way, how did you even get on this call? How did you get involved in the vagus nerve? And I was like, well, funny thing, during the pandemic, I found this study that was thousands of visits across multiple hospitals in the United States that showed HRV was the best predictor of COVID outcomes. He's like, yeah, you're welcome. So for me, I look at Jesus' example, and I think as far as retraining the brain, it's if Dr. Yuri Gitron was correct and getting into that rest, digest, develop, heal state, that neuroanatomy adaptation state is so much more powerful, really copying Jesus' example is a no-brainer for our brain. Is no-brainer. And so that's the three parts that connect.
Can we wrap up with going through the create and what that looks like as part of the equation?
So the create part is where it's kind of like it's a metric, but also like a refocuser for most people, because so I did a lot of drugs in high school, and I'm pretty much high constantly. And so what that has done to my brain, and for anyone that's struggling with addiction, this is fact. Your brain that produces dopamine is now weakened. It's not as strong as it could be. And so someone that's never done drugs, that's never looked at a phone, and phones, same thing. And now we're looking, everyone has phones now, and just staring at, social media activates that same dopamine receptor that drains us. We have to be constantly reminded to overcome our feelings, because our feelings are, and especially right now, doesn't it seem like it's like that's what leads everything? How do you feel? How do they feel? How does everyone feel about this? It's like, but feelings really. I mean, there's one study in Harvard that they looked at. I want to say it was like 200 people, and with half of them, they walked up and they handed. There's this whole scripted thing where they walk up a random person. They oh, could you hold this cup for me? I'm going to tie my shoes. And they took the cup back, and then they walked on. And half of them were given a hot cup to hold for like seconds, right? And then half of them were given a cold cup to hold for like seconds. And then within a couple minutes, a person came up and said, "Hey, would you be willing to fill out this quick survey of this short story?" And the person would say, "Yeah," and they read the story. And then they asked to evaluate the main character of the story. The people that held the cold cup for seconds described the main person in the story as cold, isolated, reserved. You guys are familiar with the study? And the ones that were the hot cup, I mean, it's like 87%, right? So the feelings become overwhelming. So the create aspect is to refocus us on producing dopamine. And so there are because again, we're gonna, if we can't create dopamine, we're gonna look for it passively, and which then keeps our brain from leveling up, from getting lit up. So there's three ways that you can create dopamine. Actually creating something. Does it need to be something good? Just simply making something, doing something, completing something is important that it gets done, and that'll produce dopamine. Simply doing something. I am going to do it, and then doing it. Doesn't matter what it is. Do something, create something, learning a new skill, whatever it is, as long as you can metric it within your brain of like, this is what I have control over right now, and I'm finishing it. And again, this is where running is such an easy one to get, because it's like, and again, this is how I've run multiple marathons. I ran, my last marathon was a 6-minute, 42-second mile pace. And it's not because I have willpower, but I've structured my existence around my weakness, which is when I run somewhere, the only way to get back is going back. So I'm completing the thing. And because when we don't complete it, especially when it's like, I am doing this and I don't, again, it's retraining that, like, I need to passively give myself dopamine back into whatever addiction is. Addiction is simply a thing that makes us weaker, right? So simply just need to replace those things with things that make us stronger. And when you produce dopamine, that encourages that adaptation process. And exercise, again, is another way to create dopamine. And Ben, I talk a lot about running. You're like, thanks a lot, dude, for no help. I've been stuck in a wheelchair before. It's a lot of work with the shoulders, man. So you could do.
Oh yeah, it's arms and shoulders are buff. Yeah, for sure.
I make sure I get my cardio in every day.
Yeah,
nice job. That's right.
busy.
Well done.
Yeah.
And then so exercise, again, that's produces dopamine. They say that the harder, the more miserable thing is, the better it is, because again, it's forcing our brain to push through the amygdala trying to control us. And just to give us an idea, anytime we have like a running narrative inside of our head of like this thought pattern that's happening, that is not our smart part of our brain. Our smart part of our brain is faster than the fastest computer to multiple factors. Have you ever been like in the zone where you just know? It's like you just know. That's because that's the
Mm-hmm.
prefrontal cortex working. When it's like, well, what if I do this? Well, what if I do that? Well, what do they mean by that? What do they think? What do they think? And that's actually our amygdala. That's our reptilian center of our brain. It's the dumb part of our brain. And so, and oftentimes what that dumb part of our brain, maybe I shouldn't call it dumb, but I don't know, better word, dim part of our brain, it's trying to keep us safe, right? It's trying to keep us safe. So safety in medicine is, gosh, $1 in $7 is spent on United States healthcare medical model, and like we're ranked like 42 on life expectancy. We're not even top 10 yet. We spend $1 in $7, and it's been how which is interesting also because like the medical symbol is like the double-headed snake, right? It's so fascinating, and what they use is safety. Oh, we got to keep you safe. Ooh. Got to be safe, right? We got to, because you may die. And it's like, well, we are dying, and we're dying quicker, and we're dying. And the thing that should be more terrifying is that we're actually not living, although we're safe. And so creating something, exercise to create dopamine, and then and this is through my research, oftentimes what I found is like sex produces dopamine. It's actually not the sex. It's developing a relationship that has the same level of intimacy that someone would be willing to have sex with. It's actually the sex gives us a dopamine rush, but it actually doesn't create strength within our dopamine brain, within the substantia nigra. And I was looking into as I with my most recent book, one of the things I was researching was like why like the sex culture is like become so significant, and like all the stuff that was not common now, and like now it's not uncommon. Like P. Diddy's in the news from his Freak Fest, right? But it's been going on forever, and now people care about it, right? And which I think is indicative of a lot of people coming to this new evolution within our species, right? Of like, no, we deserve to treat each other and take better care of each other than this. And if there's shame associated with sex, actually it's better sex, produces more dopamine, but it produces it in the same way as doing cocaine, staring at technology. It leaves us more depleted. So the create part kind of goes within the connect, where it's like creating a relationship of such strong intimacy, where that type of connection is there in order to develop dopamine, which is again within the Christian circles. It's like, oh, guys and girls can't be friends, right? Because they're gonna want to have sex with each other. Well, actually, my research says like, good, just don't. You get a bunch of people want to have sex with each other. That's awesome. Just don't, because you're interacting with those people, you're strengthening substantia nigra, which means you have more joy and energy the rest of your days, where the sex is like this much, and then actually drops you back down in that dark spot.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, dopamine, I think so many times we think dopamine is like the act of, I go and I use cocaine and I have this huge dopamine flood. A lot of times it's in the seeking of getting the cocaine, right?
Yeah,
the cocaine can unlock it, but it's the seeking, and dopamine really is the seeking drug, right? So everything you're saying, absolutely, it rings the bell.
Yeah. And that's why you guys' mission is so important, because it's like forming those connections with those young people, doing podcasts like this, and then putting tangible things into their hands that they can do and just take the next step forward.
That's it. That's right. So Doc, I think we got to do a part 2, because Ben got a hard stop for 10:15. So we didn't talk about we didn't talk about DR at all. We didn't talk about your book, or your books, plural.
Your
latest book.
Yeah.
I really wanted to talk about because we had a chiropractor on our show earlier on, a couple years ago. And after that show, I started learning more about just the whole practice of what a chiropractor does, and then the myths and the I guess the backlash that a chiropractor could get from people that doesn't look at being a chiropractor in the same breath as a medicine doctor. And I just wanted to really hear what you had to say about that, because one thing that that is a stark difference from that conversation with that chiropractor and you is the science that you bring with it. And I think that in itself is very valuable, because I think a lot of times with people with these myths about it, there's no science isn't being brought into that conversation to take it,
To add to that, it's the combination of the science and the practicality, right? Where you're able to weave these anecdotes in of your life experiences and then layer in the objective empirical evidence to it. And that is what really resonates, I think, certainly with me. But I know anyone who's in my network is going to think the same way, right? Like, I can hear an anecdotal story, but if there's not something that I can really point to say this, all right, what is it's just this person's subjective experience. And we know that there's a lot of people out there that are great at selling things, but when you combine these two, it's like, this becomes undeniable. And that, I know for me, I'd love to hear more, because there's so many things that you're talking about where I'm like, hey, how can I adapt these to my life to increase increase my quality of life? So I certainly thank you so much for this time. I do need to pop off, but thank you so much for your enthusiasm to help people and help society and help humanity. It's a breath of fresh air. It's really, really beautiful. This is our first time ever meeting, and I feel like just having this conversation, I'm like, wow, I can relate to so much of your experiences on a really
crazy level. Yes, so I agree.
Yes. Thank you for being here with us, and we'll definitely, if you're cool with it, be in touch in the near future.
Yeah, hey, my life is pretty fluid, so I'm here to serve in whatever way we can meet. I have time, and I'll make time to say that. Ben felt the same way. Appreciate learning from you about you from Kevin on the plane from the DR, and just being inspired by the incredible hardship that you've overcome, and then becoming this person that is making a profound impact in so many people's lives. So thank you guys for having me on. It's been my pleasure. And then let's set up another one.
Awesome.
Yes, we will. Yeah. We will.
All right, see you guys.
All right, guys. Thanks again, Kevin. Thanks, Ben.
Yes, sir. We'll be in touch. How long are you in DR for?
Oh gosh, we're here until February 4th. So we got an intensive healing retreat starting on Friday. We got our first group coming back down, and then I was going to do a natural building course that ended up getting canceled. So I got 2 weeks to fill with projects around here, and there's plenty to do. There's plenty to do living in the jungle.
No, I'm sure. And maybe that's when we do it. Maybe during those 2 weeks where you got the projects, we'll tap in, because I definitely want to. It's so much. And Ben, like, while you're talking, and me knowing Ben so well, like my best friend, is like, it's crazy how much you have in common. It's absolutely insane. So it's not only like the podcast and doing another one, but like past this, I hope to continue to build a firm relationship with you and support you anywhere I can. Because one thing I love about you is the fundamental being of service. Like you're quick to say, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? And that's a beautiful thing, because that always comes back around. That's the way the world should work. And I also want to do the same. So anything I can do to add value, I'm around.
Well, again, it goes back to the selfish. I was a drug addict growing up, so in order to get kicks out of life, I got to be able to be able to serve, because that's how you produce dopamine. So it's kind of the interesting thing. It's like that's. I would say, like, if we can impart one lesson on the kids and then get them adjusted so it becomes normal, it's like if they just learn that, like, by helping others, like, you are actually serving yourself. So it's actually, and that's like the book I labeled "Get Paid and Get Laid," because really that's when you train people. Like, you want to get paid and get laid, be the best person that can help other people get paid and get laid.
100. I have a saying, Doc, though, when I went from selfish to selfless, and my life has been in abundance ever since.
Love that.
it's crazy when you're selfish how limited you are. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's such
Yeah.
a oxymoron, but it's definitely a lesson I'm glad I learned. Because some people never learn that, you know. Some people or never apply it. I won't say they
Right.
never learn it, but they never apply it, and unfortunately, that's a shitty life when you're not of service. It's just
Well, and the thing is, it's like, you know, someone asks, you know, like, hey, Kevin, if you ask somebody, like, hey, would you like to go to jail in order to learn how to be selfless? I feel like most people are like, nah, and like same thing for
right,
me. It's like the reason why,
right,
right? But that's often what it
yeah,
takes, and
yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
if I can be successful at helping you guys, like, why not break that cycle? Because like I have a depth of my neuroanatomy because during the pandemic I decided not to do the thing that they're telling me to do, and I had to back it
mhm,
with science, and I had to back it within my own belief systems as far as being a follower of Jesus, right? So
right.
it's like, would I want to go through that experience again? No. Am
I'm
I
sure.
glad that I did? Yeah. So
Yes,
you know, it's like
exactly,
my prayer is that
exactly.
we can, like, together we can help people without having to go to that moment of like, oh, that broke
Yeah,
me good, you know. It's like, and I think we can. I think we can.
yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. We just gotta. I think that's where that lived experience comes in. Because when
Mm,
someone sees, like someone like yourself and your story, like someone that's dealing with addiction, it hits different when they're hearing it for someone that has dealt with addiction
right.
or deals with addiction. Um, for me, same thing. Like the impact that we have in winning ways, especially like the reentry population. I really, and it's not 100% of my staff, but a lot of my staff have been incarcerated. So when they're going into a prison to talk to someone, it's the connection is
Yes.
is is instant because
Yeah.
I've been there. I know what it feels like to be where you're at. So yeah, I think those are the things where we can overcome the person having to go through the hell. They can actually listen to someone that has been through it, and a
Right.
lot of times that's where the impact lies. You know, so it's like you said, like you got to go through some hard things to then bounce through or bounce from, but it's all in God's work. It's all testimony at the end of the day. And you got to
Yeah.
go through something. You got to go through a test to then have a testimony. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So
That's I like
it's
that. You got to go
yeah,
through a testimony to have a testimonial. Yeah, I
yeah,
love
you
that.
know what I mean? That
Yeah.
it's just what it is. You know. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a I love how you said it. Even a lot of the stuff I've been through, I don't want to go through again, but I'm glad I
Yeah.
did because
Yeah.
look where we're at now. So
Yeah.
Um, but listen, Doc, I'm gonna shoot you a text. I'll shoot you a text or email or whatever. Once I talk to Ben later on today to figure out another date. Does these morning times work for you?
You know, I'm pretty flexible here in the DR. So
Okay.
I'm about an hour ahead of you guys now. So DR time.
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, yep. You're
So,
like Central Time.
and I do like,
Yeah.
there are like studies that show that when there's nature in the background, like people want to watch longer too. So if we do it in the evening, it's dark here. So, you know, we lose the ambiance.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So I'm yeah, no, this is literally our first time ever doing one in the morning. You usually do it afternoon, evening. So I'm with it, and I'm sure Ben is because Ben, like Ben day's starting right now. My day's about to start. Well, it already started, but you know what I mean, work wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to start off with this and have this good energy for the rest of the day, I'm with it. So yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
we're gonna make it happen though for sure. The next couple of weeks, I'm gonna make sure of that.
Do you want to do two more talking points? Because I feel like the history of the like chiropractic and like a lot of the myths and stuff, I feel like that's such a good one, because it's like oftentimes
Yeah,
people don't realize. Like, I mean, often chiropractors don't even realize it's like it's like a common thing. Like I didn't know. I mean, I know my life got changed by a chiropractor, but you know, when I told people I was going to be a chiropractor, people were like, "Why would you do that? They're not real doctors." But I'm like, "Well, yeah, I
well,
know they're not
yeah,
real doctors because they didn't give me drugs." Like, but like you know, there was a whole Supreme Court trial, like the AMA, like intentionally
mhm.
targeted to destroy the chiropractic profession. So I feel like that's a good talking point, and then
No,
just help.
it is,
Yeah,
it is. No, I'm that the obviously DR and what you're doing there, the
yeah,
books. Yeah, I think those three will be that's a whole nother hour right there. You know what I mean?
okay, yeah,
Um, But yeah. We have plenty to talk about. And hopefully we can schedule it where Ben could have like 90 minutes, so we don't have to rush through either. But we'll figure that out. But yeah, I think those 3 talking points will be perfect.
Okay, perfect. And then if you could you like just come up with like a list of like, okay, these are the common struggles that our people see, and then I can kind of start to wrap my brain around like, okay, how do I gear it towards those people so they can hear what they need to hear in order to help them with their struggles? Okay.
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Yeah, I'll get that to you. That's a awesome idea. Yeah, let me make sure I put this on put this in my notes real quick so I can make sure okay, I got it. Okay. Yeah, I'll get that to you.
Awesome.
For sure.
Okay. Appreciate you, Kevin. Appreciate everything you do. Thanks for setting this up. Thanks again for being so flexible with scheduling wise, and I know it got a little chaotic there with moving around dates. So I appreciate your flexibility in that.
Oh yeah, no, my pleasure. It was worth the wait, and I already knew. You know what I mean? So I already knew. I just knew that this was going to be a great conversation, and I knew you and Ben was going to hit it off. So it's all good. It's my pleasure, and yeah, all good.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you.
All right, brother. Talk soon.
Talk soon. Lock it in soon.
Right. Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. I guarantee it. Yes, sir.
All right. You want me to message you tonight, and we want to lock it in today?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll
message you tonight.
Yeah, Ben probably has he does therapy, so knowing Ben, he probably has like 4 or 5 straight. So then he'll call me. Ben's gonna call me later to recap our show. So then by this evening, I should have an answer for you. So yeah, please text me.
Awesome. All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right. Yes, sir. Peace.